Hey, this is Kevin from HackFab RC here. Today I'm going to show you how to build our new V2 Mini-T 2.0 late model / EDM conversion kit. So we're going to take this truck and basically turn it into one of these. So this is basically everything you get in the base kit for the late model. If you get the EDM, it's basically this stuff, and these shock towers are optional. What we're going to do here is build a fully optioned late model off of the Mini-T 2.0 using our conversion kit. So the first thing we're going to want to look at is our chassis. This is the plate as you'll get it in a kit. Has a PureTech Velcro battery strap system so that you can run, like your stock pack, fit in there nice, and it's basically set up like that from the factory. And the strap is universal, so we can also run it wider to accommodate larger packs. That's what we're going to end up doing. This is going to be a brushless car, so first thing I'm going to do is take this and remove the backside bracket and move it all the way out for that, just so that when we don't have to do it later. These are only loosely inserted when you get them, so double check these screws. If you want to put a little bit of Loctite on it, it won't hurt. I would just be careful because it is M2 threads, and they are somewhat thin and they're small screws, so I would just be wary of that when you go to tighten them. I wouldn't over tighten them too much, but get them snug so they don't move. So that's all it takes to move that bracket. Now all of a sudden, we can run this pack without issues. There's enough strapping on there to hold that in nice and snug. It's not going to go anywhere. There are included in the kit, while we're talking about the battery brackets, these little self-adhesive foam strips. These are meant to go on the inside here if you need it. Not every pack will, but there are several battery packs out there that are narrower than the 35mm gap here, so these just allow some adjustment and some cushioning if you want to position your battery to the outside or to the inside, or just help it be a little bit more snug in there. So that's just what those are for, as a real quick description. So now we've got that, we can kind of go ahead. The next step is going to be to take our base truck apart. Basically what we're going to do is remove every screw from the bottom of the chassis. You can leave the ones in there for the side rails, we don't care about that, but all the ones holding the front and rear clip and the servo end, we're going to have to remove. So do that right now. Do them in whatever order you want, starting with the servo screws. HackRC makes some handy little mats. This one here is a custom magnetic mat I picked up a while back, but they're nice for these screws don't roll off your table. These factory screws here are all M2 thread, and they use a 1.5mm hex driver. We're going to have a few in our store. If you don't have one, you can pick up one from MIP or any other manufacturer that sells drivers. Should work. But it's nice to have a good one. This here is for the waterfall around the motor. These ones will need to keep. We end up, for our chassis conversion, reusing a lot of these screws, so just keep them handy. I will note that all of these screws here are pretty much the same length. They're around 6 millimeters, and then these 4 screws here are longer, probably like 10 millimeters. So I'd keep those separate, or just note that those rear diff housing ones are longer. You want to be wary when you take this rear end apart. It does have a tendency to kind of just explode and fall all over various components. It's just the way that Losi designed it, I guess. But there are, you know, the suspension pin holders and the rear bumper area and the arms and the dog bones and everything. You want to kind of try to keep all that together. The thing you want to do is actually remove these pins. And this should come off relatively. So, not too bad. That's your rear end. It's free from the chassis. So then really all we have to do is we're going to use the same 6 holes here to mount the rear end. Again, use the same screws. One thing we're not going to need is this battery door. So we can go ahead and remove that. Which is a super long screw that goes through this hinge point for this battery door. So if you're running the stock speed control, and you can just remount that right there. We're gonna swap this one out some time in the future, so I'm not gonna worry about that at this stage. Still need to do the waterfall screws. And there you have the rear end. So I usually find it easiest to do one clip at a time, worry about the other one afterwards. So for the front end, we're going to remove the bumper first. So you can toss that, you're not going to need that. So then here's how you have the chassis. It's attached basically with these two screws through the lower bulkhead and you know, up into the stack there. So we'll want to remove these two screws. And then this is how everything kind of gets sandwiched. So you have the lower block, your chassis, and then your upper part of the bulkhead. So what we've got here, get rid of that. We basically made 1.6 millimeter brass chassis spacer, which mimics the old chassis, so that you can pop this in here and keep all of that geometry the same. So yeah, it firmly snaps in there, and then what you do is you put it back together. Now it's just as if the chassis were sitting in there. We're going to mount it back together with the two back screws. I don't know if you can see that, but the screws that pass through the back and the front of this little bulkhead end up going through captured either lock nuts or regular nuts in there, so that they're pretty snug and don't really have to worry about stripping out plastic parts in there. So the next part is our kick-up wedge. This is the piece that is going to mount to the front of the chassis and give us that kick-up angle back that we had with the stock chassis. So basically this little suspension pin guard goes in the front. Doesn't really have any purpose there, sort of for structural support or anything, but does provide a little bit of protection in case there is some sort of accident. So then it mounts just like that. See that? And we'll use included 2 by 14 millimeter hex drive screws, and these also use a 1.5 millimeter hex. The tolerances on the kick-up itself are relatively tight, so you'll have to thread through that a little bit before it goes into the bulkhead itself, and then eventually comes up through and into the lock nuts. But trust me, it does go together. And they do go in at an angle, the same angle as the kick-up itself, and then they are above the flat part of the where it mounts to the chassis, so there's no interference that way. I'll show you that in a second. So there you can see they're at an angle. This is the flat part. This will be where we're bolting to the chassis. You can disconnect the servo if you want, but it's not really necessary. So then the front part, just bolts from the underneath up through these holes here, and then we have 2x6mm hex drive screws here. These are a 1.3mm hex drive sometimes, or 1.5. I've had to switch screw manufacturers a couple times just due to supply right now with COVID and everything, but they will match from kit to kit, so just be wary of that. It could be 1.3, it could be 1.5. There are other 1.3 hex drive screws included in the kit regardless, so just be on the lookout for that. And if you're going to be running this a lot, you have high-speed brushless system, not a bad idea, since these are metal on metal screws, to put a tiny dab of Loctite on there. Just for this purpose of the video, I'm not going to get into that right now. But it's, as you can probably tell, super easy to pull back apart. It's just the 4 little screws holding your front end on. And you know, like I said, it's pretty easy for them to loosen up, or could be. So I would recommend a little bit of Loctite. And then next you'll see we've got the call them brace spacers. It's the gap between the chassis brace here and our new chassis. Basically, that comes in from the kick-up wedge. So we have these little tic-tac looking spacers. So all we're going to do is install them in between here, sandwich them in. For those, we have included 2x10mm hex drive stainless steel screws. They're a little bit tricky to get in there, but just gonna pull this. I pulled the servo out just so I could get to things easier. I have found that generally these brace supports, chassis braces, whatever you want to call them, tend to strip out if you take a car apart a lot. Learned that through the prototyping stages of these cars, and I mean a lot, I mean like 10, 15 times. It really depends. Losi does make some aluminum ones, and I think they're around 20 bucks. On my full option brushless car, I've got those installed, and I would recommend those. They're not 100% necessary, but they are nice and they provide a little bit of rigidity. And like I said, they're aluminum and threaded, so you can't really strip them out like you can the stock plastic ones if you take it apart a lot. So basically that's it. You have a rolling chassis. Go ahead and mount the servo back in. This is going to be your stock. You're going to use the stock screws for this. servo back in, connect it if you want. Save it for later, I don't know. So next we have basically the rear body mount. Usually put these screws in there from the kit just so that there's a little less confusion on what goes where. Still need to work on a full set of instructions. But basically it's the 2 screws that go through the shock tower. And these also have brass inserts in the body mount, which are the same as the kick-up wedge and the battery brackets. So those should hold up to being taken apart a lot for maintenance or just repairs. If you got a transmission issue or whatever, I don't know. But not a bad idea to just snug them. They're not going to strip out. A little bit of Loctite might not hurt, but probably not really required. So then this is your basic like EDM kit. So the Eastern Dirt modified body, like from Kips, would be able to bolt right up to this. You would end up running the 2 included body posts here and here, and then this would drop right on. And you can run it like this, or you can put the front spoiler on. Up to you. But you don't need these body mounts. You can take those off if you're running the stock tower. I'm going to show you our optional wide front tower. So we're not going to need those anyway. I'll just leave them on for now. You can run the body posts. You get them in a kit of 4. So it really depends on which body you're going to run. You can put, the 2 in the back. They just slide right through, and you put your own supplied pins on the upper and lower holes to kind of hold it in place. And they're adjustable, so you can lower them without a lot of issue. Or you could use the included collars to replace one of the pins and make it a little bit more secure. Also, like I said, you can run these in the middle for the EDM body, or you can run them in the front for like the NASCAR and NAS truck body. That works pretty well. There's a full guide on the website as far as body fitment and recommendations, but for right now I'm not going to install any of those in this video because it's pretty simple. It's a 440 screw either through these holes or just sliding it in through there. I am going to install our rear body mount extension. This is a rolling change that we've had for this. Originally, this is the same piece we had for the version 1 car. It was G10, now it's carbon fiber. We did start to include these holes here. Originally, I was going to recommend drilling your own, and cause some people like to mount them a little bit sideways to get different support levels, but I think I've seen very few people do that, so we're just going to go ahead and do it this way and make it easier for everybody. And if you want to mount it a little sideways, you can still drill your own holes. Right now I just threaded that through the mount itself. Go ahead and put the lock nuts on. I wouldn't recommend just leaving the screws through there. Eventually they'll pull out. So we've got lock nuts included. Should work okay. Now we've got the rear body mount extension mounted, so we're getting closer to you know, our late model setup. The only thing that's left is the front bumper. Now with the front bumper, we include 440 blue aluminum screws for this. They are countersunk, so that they will go in nicely, flush to the bottom of the car. So I'll show you that. But we made them aluminum in the kit for the same concept that you have in pan car racing. Basically, it creates a weak point in the mounting system, so that if in the event of a large impact on the front, hopefully those will be a shear point and they will shear off and break the screws, rather than, you know, having to replace a bumper or a chassis. So that's the reason behind that. And those are, again, the same type of screws. So there we have our completed V2 kit, late model setup. Show a little closer. So this will be everything that you need to run a McAllister late model body or any of the other late model style bodies that they have that fit that same original Losi Mini late model wheelbase, you know, including the NASCAR, NAS truck, some street stock type bodies, and away you go. So that's the basic V2 conversion, and as you can see, it doesn't take very long. You end up with a few extra parts, but everything should be included in the kit that you need to make the conversion. And so this should be a great kit for racetracks when we start racing indoors again, and hope to see, you know, a bunch of guys running it. I think it'll be a really fun class to bring back, you know, late model racing, EDM racing, and you know, this platform in general is very, very good. The Mini-T 2.0 is far and away quite a bit better than the original Mini-T I've found, you know, as far as parts. You know, it's a lot more of a professional kit, whereas the original Mini-T had a lot of toyish components with the, you know, the 4-wire servo, but this is far and away an improvement, and there's so many options already out there as far as aftermarket servos, you know, $40 brushless systems if you want to go faster, you know, $15, $20 lipos. You know, the options are endless, and I think this is a really good platform, and I'm excited to see it all on track. So hopefully you like this, and if you stick around, I will show you the installation of the optional wide shock towers. Thanks.